We have a presentation tonight from Skip, 80H, and Jason, KC0EDE, who are, somebody decided they wanted to call me here, who are going to speak about our upcoming Iowa QSO party, which they'll share more on. But the big deal there is that that's sponsored by the Story County Amateur Radio Club. So I'm sure they'll get into that more. But with no further ado, we'll pass the presentation along to Skip, and I'll take a seat.
Okay, thank you, Paul. And let's see, I'll pass this on to you at the appropriate time and put it down. First, thanks to Mike, N1XK, and back there, he volunteered at Field Day to do a program on FT8, and I said, how about September 1st? And then weeks later, I realized September was the only time we had to promote the Iowa QSO party. And I said, yeah, the QSO party is a big deal. So thanks to Mike, he's flexible. He's now scheduled for October 6th, and we'll make that work out. Now, another volunteer, Jeff, K0JSB, he will head up the program November 3rd, and that'll be on the Iowa Railroads on the Air event that was held a few weeks ago in August. And okay, that makes 2 volunteers. So I hope that other people in the club, whether you're here tonight or online, will have some good ideas for the future programs. And please contact me with your ideas. Another thanks to Jason for sharing his experience as the official scorekeeper for the Iowa QSO party. And he knows the scores, he knows the rules and the details better than I ever would. If you've submitted a log and received a certificate from Iowa QSO parties in the past, Jason processed your entry. Now, it works. Here's the outline. 4 parts. Number 1, we go from kind of wide angle or very broad look, significance of state QSO parties in North America. And then we get down to the Iowa QSO party. Here's one indication of, let's see, and Jason, yeah.
Thank you. So this is kind of a page from the WA7B&M contest calendar, and gives you kind of an idea of some of the QSO parties out there. There's a few listed. And then there's this state QSO party challenge that kind of started up, I think it was in the year 2000. But the way it works, when you enter all the individual QSO parties, then your score you can submit. There's a website you can turn in, we'll get to that, you can participate in this kind of overlay contest. And so as you participate in more QSO parties, that kind of builds up into this state QSO party challenge. And then here's what's going on in September for the QSO parties. And you can see our Iowa QSO party there about in the middle, September 17th. There's a few others that day as well. There's a few here at the start of September, one at the end, and then a few more into October. So kind of scattered all throughout the year. There's lots of state QSO parties. The ones on the 17th, of course, Iowa QSO party, it runs from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. And then there's also Texas, New Hampshire, New Jersey, and Washington State. Most of their hours are similar. And you can get more details on hours and times if you look at that WA7B&M contest page. I'll give it back to Skip.
Okay, thank you. Now, I found these slides on a link that is in our listed rules. It's the state QSO parties link, and they're the ones that started the QSO party challenge. And they had a lot of things I wanted to say. One, why participate in state QSO parties? And I looked at these only from my point of view. I said, well, I participate in state QSO parties to make contacts. And when I turn on the radio, I don't turn it on just to listen. I want to make contacts. Otherwise, I get kind of antsy and I turn it off. Now, but they listed some very tangible reasons. One, great for completing worked all states, because you can see what states are going to be on the weekend. If that's a state you need, then that raises your chances immeasurably. It took me a long time to get worked all states. And I got a whole bunch of states at the beginning, and then getting those last ones, that was like pulling teeth. A lot of people hunt U.S. counties. I think there are 3,077 counties for the Worked All Counties Award. And it's a good chance to work the rarer ones. And then the U.S. Counties Award and the County Challenge list that Jason just introduced, and that many parties are small enough that the new categories, you have a chance to score highly in some of those specialized categories. Another reason to participate, especially on the 17th, and in Iowa, we don't put out a whole lot of the counties, and we may be like rare DX stations. And it's more fun to be the activator rather than the hunter. And for some of you who have done QSO parties or Parks on the Air, I'm sure some of you will agree with me. And that's why I put the rig in the car and I go off to some other county, not near an interstate or a big city, and I get a lot of contacts that way. And great for rover and mobile and portable ops. I do the mobile, so I'm all for that. And some of the contests have special or separate awards for these categories, and we do too. And some of you have restrictions on home antennas. Well, one way around that, it doesn't solve the problem, but would be get in the car and go.
So another reason to participate, it's a good way to kind of get into contesting. Usually they're more friendly, laid back competition. There's still an urgency to make contacts and things like that, but usually it's a lot more laid back, and you'll hear people not quite rag chewing, but they'll at least say hi to each other if they know each other and things like that. It's a good way to connect with old friends, and like I mentioned, you'll hear people saying hello more than just making a contact. It's a good way for club competitions. Several people in a club can activate their home station, or if they go mobile or something like that, and then all of those scores can be combined. And, a club in Ames can compete against a club in Cedar Rapids or Waterloo or somewhere else. And it's a good activity I mentioned for new contesters because it's a little bit more laid back. There's both CW and SSB. And, so if you're new at CW, it's a kind of a good way to work your speed up a little bit. And it's kind of shorter duration too. Ours runs 12 hours, but several other ones run 2 days, and you can pick which day you want to work or pick a small time period in one day. And there's all kinds of opportunities. You saw many, many, many throughout the year. Another interesting thing about the state QSO parties, a lot of them have unique aspects to them. So different rules. Some have bonus stations. So you might have several stations. I think the Kansas QSO party last weekend was kind of done in conjunction with some special event calls. So they had a lot of 1-by-1 calls on the air. And if you worked several of those, you got a special certificate, I think. And then there's prizes. Some of these do prizes. I think the one in Washington State sends out smoked salmon, some maple syrup from Vermont, and of course the Iowa QSO party, we send out some popcorn. So if you happen to get in the top 3 scores, you get some popcorn.
Okay, now let's look at that state QSO party challenge. And this is how their website starts out. And the main leader of that is Anthony Luscre, K8ZT. And I noticed in the upper right-hand corner, this is sponsored by ICOM. And in my mind, that gave this whole thing credibility. Maybe it helped because I have an ICOM rig in the car, but the rigs at home are the Yaesus. So I'm really not brand loyal, but I sure noticed that. Now, his map was from 2 years ago. That white area in the middle of Canada is now part of a QSO party for the Prairie Provinces, VE4, 5, and 6. And Canada added another one over on the East Coast for Nova Scotia. And the purpose of the QSO Party Challenge, he says, take it to be a catalyst. That's the main point. To take state QSO Party contesting to the next level, but be a catalyst and develop interest. And they want to provide a way to recognize the active amateur radio operators for their active participation. And they point out it is not a contest in itself, but it combines scores from other contests.
So some of the goals of the State QSO Party Challenge just kind of gives you another activity, some more enjoyment for the participants, something additional to work towards. It assists the State QSO Party contest organizers in providing a quality contest. There's a little bit of pressure, so to speak, if you know that not only are people coming to your contest just for your contest, but also as part of this larger thing happening. So it kind of does make you want to have a good contest in and of itself for your state. And then just to promote state QSO party contests in general. So how does the challenge work? Skip, I think this goes back to you.
Okay, participants work as many of the state QSO parties as you wish or as you can. And this slide says 45, but with the addition of the 2 new ones in Canada, then it's 47. And you enter your results on the 3830.com website. I never looked up the 3830.com website until I was getting ready for this presentation. And 3830, that's a 75-meter frequency. And it started by contesters who would get together on that frequency after contest, and they would exchange contest scores with each other, mainly because the magazines, QST and CQ, wouldn't publish the results for months and months. And maybe some of them wanted to get together and brag a little bit. Who knows? But this group is still alive and well, and they handle a lot of scores for a lot of contests and QSO parties. And then when you enter your score on their site, then they keep track on their computer. They aggregate the results for each participant's QSO parties. And their overall philosophy, I got to lower this. I sound bad enough without it. They want to increase the participation in the state QSO parties, all of them. And Jason and I want to increase participation in the Iowa QSO party. We fit right in. And yeah. Here.
Okay. So the challenge does one thing, and that's kind of provides an additional goal for people, right? Instead of just the one QSO party, now it kind of adds as a multiplier, so to speak, toward the additional challenge. So the more QSO parties you work, you know, it's kind of an incentive for that. Where somebody maybe didn't care about the Iowa QSO party before, now by including that QSO party, it's a bigger deal for them in conjunction with all the other ones that they've worked. And it encourages the active contesters to get more involved. So the score is based on the number of QSOs worked times the number of QSO parties worked. And you have to have a minimum number of QSOs for each QSO party. And there's a bunch of different levels of the award that's available. So the challenge scores are displayed on a leaderboard based on the total score and the number of parties worked. And there's another sorting based on the number of the parties worked. So people, just by submitting their score to that page, it kind of tabulates it for them. There's nothing special they have to do. Let's see. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit more detail about the Iowa QSO party. So a couple things to do to prepare before participating. One is to know the exchange. And so that is your call sign, a signal report, and your county. If you're in an Iowa station, and most of the people here are going to be Iowa stations. If you're outside of Iowa, they will report their state or their province or DX if they're in a foreign country, and you would record that information in your log. And we use 3-letter abbreviations for the counties. And up on the website is a list which you can download as a PDF file and print off and have handy there, or just have it handy on your computer as a PDF. But there's a 3-letter abbreviation for each county that you'll use. And then we have a list of state and province abbreviations, and also DX for what people will report to you. Then on the Iowa QSO party website, we also have a list of suggested frequencies and certain bands. So if you're going to do some CW work on 80, look around 3.540. And then if you want to do some phone work on 40, we kind of suggest around 7.210. And that can vary, of course, and there's going to be other QSO parties as well. So this is just kind of intended as a starting point. And then take a little bit of time to understand the logging and the submission of your log. We get about somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 entries. And so it's very helpful if everybody submits their log in the same format, this Cabrillo format, which is very popular for contests. Makes it a lot easier to do the scoring. And you can see that each QSO entry has the data associated with it, the band, the mode, the date and time, and then your call sign, signal report, and location, and then the other station's call sign, signal report, and location. And there's a template available up on the w0yl.com website as well that is there that you can download and you can look at. We do accept paper logs just kind of as a way to try to be inclusive, but really only for people who have done just a few contacts, because to include those in the scoring, that means somebody has to type those in and make them electronic. And if you do decide to log on paper, you can also make it electronic yourself by just typing it into a text file or something similar, as long as it follows the Cabrillo format. And like I said, there's an example out there. And there are software that you can use that make it easy, and these ones do produce a Cabrillo format file. All right, I'll give it over to Skip for this part.
Okay, and we need you near the mic
Oh, okay.
also at the same time. Okay, now the QSO party has started and we've got the rig turned on. And let's assume that at maybe this meeting, I told Jason, I'm going to get on at 9 o'clock, Saturday the 17th, and I'll be on 20. Look for me. And I'll be calling CQ. So Jason turns his rig on and he hears CQ Iowa from AD0H. It may vary, it call it CQ Iowa QSO Party or CQ IAQP. and I'd be near the listening frequency that was in the table. And you can go up and down, that doesn't matter, but that's where people are going to listen first. And so I send the CQ.
So then once I hear Skip, and then when I hear him start to listen, I would just send my call and just say your call, KC0EDE, and then I'll wait for him to acknowledge.
Okay, and if I have good copy on Jason's signal, I'll just go right into the exchange. KC0EDE 59 Polk. And I'm assuming I'll be in the car and down in Polk County somewhere. Now.
And then so if I heard him okay and everything's good, I can just say QSL, and then I would go right into my side of the exchange. And if I heard him as 57, I'd say 57 Story County or Story County, Iowa. If he was, say, in Texas or something and just wanted Iowa, he gets that by me saying Story County, Iowa.
And maybe the signal report, then the county and the state is going to be helpful when we have other QSO parties going on. And if somebody says, well, I'm not in the Iowa QSO party, I'm in the Texas QSO party, that's fine with me. If I get a contact from you, I have a signal report from you and I have Texas. And I have sent you the county and the state for your QSO party log. And what you do with it is kind of up to you.
So then after I've given my side of the exchange, I would just listen for him to come back, and either he's going to say 7-3, that's all he needs, or he might say QRZ for the next station. And that's kind of the end of the exchange. And then I would go on looking for somebody else calling CQ. And Skip would go on and call CQ for eternity.
Okay, the last line on this slide. When you feel ready, find an empty frequency and call CQ.
So if I decide that I want to take a turn at that, I could go CQ Iowa QSO party. This is KC0EDE, Kilo Charlie 0, Echo Delta Echo. And then I would just listen for a response.
And he might hear a call, K8 IBP or Kilo 8 India Bravo Papa.
And sometimes if you're calling CQ, and you might hear several stations trying to reach you, so you just pick one that you heard pretty well, or if you heard the last few letters of their call sign, you could say, the call ending in Bravo Papa, and then they'll come back to you. But basically you acknowledge them. So K8 IBP, you're 55 in Story County.
Okay, and then if I got that, then I'll just send back 57 Ohio, assuming the K8 IBP is in Ohio. And K8 IBP used to be in Ohio because that used to be my call. And
then I might say 7-3 and good luck in the contest, and then I'll call CQ again.
And that's where the comment about this activity is a little more laid back than some of the serious contests like the November sweepstakes. They give the reports, the exchange, and nothing else. And then I put down POC, piece of cake. It's an easy way to make contacts and effective, and it works.
Okay, so the next section we'll talk about submitting your entries. Most contests you kind of submit a cover sheet with, but we don't really do that for the QSO party, at least for the Iowa QSO party. But if you want to calculate your points as kind of a verification, on the website we say voice, each SSB contact is 1 point. And if it's CW, it's 2 points for that QSO. Or if you're doing digital, that's 2 points as well. So those would be a QSO point or a contact point. And then you need to figure out your multiplier, which is basically how many counties you worked or how many states you worked. If you're in Iowa and you worked 4 other counties, you worked Iowa plus 4 other counties, and then you worked, say, 10 other states, you would have 15 multiplier points. So you take your multiplier times your QSO points, and that determines your total score. Now, some of the log programs take into account different bands and different modes when they do the multipliers, but we don't do that. But if you do work a station on another band, that is a separate QSO and an additional point or 2 points if it's CW. So it's all explained on the website pretty clearly. And then when you produce your log file out of your logging software, you'll save it as usually a .log file or a .text file, maybe with your call sign and the letters IAQP as part of the name, something like that. And what we did is we set up a website where you can turn them in. We used to accept them through email, and but then we had to copy out of the email each log file and put them in a folder. And this has made it a whole lot easier to do. And if you insist on doing a paper log, we do accept them, but we'd rather prefer to get the electronic file. So when you go to the web page to submit your file, the first page you'll kind of see is a little welcome page, and there'll be a link, and it'll take you to this form on the left. You just put in your name, your call sign, your email, and then where it says log file there, you would hit browse, or some browsers it says choose file, but that lets you pick your text file or your log file to submit. And then you click the submit button, it'll take you to this page. And if everything was okay, if it looked like a valid log file and there were no major issues, it'll show you your name, and it'll give you a chance to verify what class you're entering. There's a bunch of different categories, classes. We try to pick it out of the log file as best as we can, but it's not always that simple. And then it gives you a rundown of how many QSO records it found. Some other contests, when you submit, they'll give you a lot more detail. We just try to keep this very simple, just as a way to collect the logs and try to make it easy on ourselves. And so then you would hit the confirm button, and that would take you to a little page that says, thank you, we've received your submission. And then once we get all the logs submitted, after about a month or so, we close the submission. Then we'll go through the scoring process. But this just allows us to collect them very easily. I don't know, Skip, is this you or me?
Go ahead.
Okay. So last year, here's a few numbers on what we had for participants. There was a total of 209 here, and you can see a lot of them are out-of-state stations, 130. And there's several categories where there's only 1 or 2 entrants. So, you know, if you wanted to try and operate with a friend somewhere, or if you wanted to try and go portable, there's quite a bit of opportunity there. A few people operating QRP out of state, not very many in state, and then a few people doing some high power operations. So just a few numbers there. And actually, I wrote a couple other numbers down. When we started this in 2017, we only had 80 submissions, and then 2018, 53, and 2019, 82. And then we think because the state QSO party challenge happened, in 2020, we had 245 logs turned in, and last year, the 209 value. So that kind of gives you an idea how well the state challenge thing helped us out. Here's a few stats about the Story County Club. There were, 3, 6, 7 stations in the Story County Club that that operated. And there was a station, OM2VL, a DX station that worked 28 counties in Iowa. And then we had a mobile rover, I think it was 2 people that were working together, WI0WA, that activated 22 counties by traveling around and at different times they were in different locations. That really goes a long ways to helping put Iowa on the map, so to speak. If we get 2 or 3 or 4 rover stations that kind of take routes through different parts of the state. So Skip mentioned the certificates, and I just shared this one because I knew the guy wouldn't complain. Just an example. Mike Lowe and I activated my house last year, and so we were, I think, the only station in that category. And so, no, it's not a joke. So we won our category, and we got a certificate for that. Skip mentioned that we generate these certificates, but he didn't mention, basically, I give the scoring data to Clint, and Clint has generated this with a mail merge operation. So Clint's kind of the mastermind behind generating these, and many thanks to him for taking on that burden. He's kind of made it automated, so it makes it pretty easy. And then here's the out of state, one from out of state. And then here's a guy who worked single lot mobile. Apparently there was another station who outperformed you just a little bit, Skip, but. So anyway, this is just some examples of the certificates. The popcorn we talked about as a prize, those are for the top scoring stations. Usually that's going to be a mobile station. The one that activated the 20-some counties, they're going to make a ton of contacts. So they're going to have hundreds of thousands of points. And I think we're to the end and ready for questions.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Jason. Now, discussion questions. This is up to you, and Paul, turn us off when.
No, you're good for now.
Okay,
What I do want to do though is jump on, be able to see the, sorry, let me unmute my mic there. I need to just be able to see the remote participants, and hopefully I can unmute them, or we can work that, so.
okay, discussion question. What has worked for you in QSO parties or other questions that you may have that Jason can answer? And
anyone remote, raise your hand. If you're in the room, we'll bring a mic to you.
okay, go ahead, Chuck.
Logging software outputs. Is there a standard state QSO party log format, or can you get one just for Iowa, for example?
So the format really in the log, that Cabrillo format is kind of the standard. Depending on if it's, say it again.
As far as, let's say, scoring and that type of thing goes.
Yeah, I use the N3FJP software, and he has a link or a specialized version for the Iowa QSO party, and other versions for the other QSO parties. I don't know how he keeps up, but it's kind of a standard middle of the road logging software, and I like it. I guess I'm pretty middle of the road.
Yeah, a lot of them are pretty similar. It does make it somewhat easier on them, the score software makers, because most of them are similar. There is a few differences, like some might have bonus points and some might not, but they do that usually in the back end with like configuration settings. But usually if you get the Iowa score, it's set and ready to go. And a lot of times they'll have an in-state version and an out-of-state version, depending on what you're trying to accomplish.
I'll throw out as well, just a comment here is that I too use the N3FJP for the contest. I will say that if you're operating a county line operation, the logging is significantly more streamlined in N1MM than it is in N3FJP from my experience. There's a way that you can go in there and it will automatically create both entries for you as you're going and do a very good job of keeping track of that.
So does N3FJP, does that require you to treat it as two contacts if you're on a county line?
It will still log them, but it's
Yep.
not as, I'll say, as streamlined based on my experience. So
Okay.
you can still set up that you're a county line operation.
Okay.
But
Now I'm still looking for what's worked for you in QSO parties. And now, Paul, you made a lot of contacts last year.
I did.
I thought I made a lot of contacts. You made a lot more. What's your secret?
So I'm not shy about sharing my secret to success, to be honest. So for me, the secret sauce to the QSO party for me has been go find a POTA entity and park there. And if you can find a county line operation that's a POTA entity, even better. And that was the secret to last year. I forget the total score, but I did well. It's just a single operator portable. You have to do some forethought because our county line operation in the Iowa QSO party is very specific. Part of your station has to be physically in each of the counties that you're activating. So that also narrows the list a little bit. You need to figure out how to get coax or an antenna across the county line. There's one up at Hardin Story Marshall that you can set up right over the GPS marker for the county corner. And that's an opportunity for you. The one that I activated this past year, I set up the antenna on one side of the road, ran coax through a culvert and about 500 feet down to my operating position. And that gave me both counties because part of my station was in each location. So the reason that I call out POTA is we allow self-spotting in the Iowa QSO party. It's really about drumming up contacts, not about, being real strict about these interpretations of, well, you can't do this and you can't do this. If you want to get assistance, go for it. If you want to spot yourself, go for it. If you want to use spots, go for it. Well, Parks on the Air has a very active community around it. And so by getting spotted as a Parks on the Air station, it drums up activity automatically for folks who are just going to make contact with you simply because you're Parks on the Air. The participation or the scoring for the Iowa QSO party is kind of ancillary to that. So I rambled a bit there, but that to me is kind of the secret sauce that I've found for success in the QSO party as a portable station. Now, home station's totally different thing. I've never operated a QSO party from home, so others might be able to speak to that.
Okay, and Cynthia.
Yeah, so what I'll do is my QSO or my CQ on that, and that's the other secret is if you want to rack up the points, you've got to run the frequency. So you're going to need to find an open spot. You're going to need to build up the skill and the confidence to jump on and call CQ. So what I'll do is I'll call CQ, the Iowa QSO party, CQ Parks on the Air. This is W0YR calling CQ for the Iowa QSO party and Parks on the Air, Kilo 9326. And that's kind of my standard CQ call. So I let the stations calling know, or that are responding to me know that I'm calling for any station, and I'm specifically Parks on the Air and the QSO party in my CQ message that goes out. So you'll find something that works for you, but that's what has worked for me to really call attention to both. That way they're expecting more than just the standard Parks on the Air exchange, and they're expecting more than just a standard county exchange for the contest as Skip and Jason kind of recited.
Now, I used parts of that suggestion last year. Excuse me. And I went out and found a park it wasn't a park, it was a wildlife refuge in Guthrie County. It had a K number. And so I worked mobile there, both phone and CW. I worked from some other counties on the way out because Guthrie County's way out there. And I plan to go on to the next county, which may be Audubon or something like that. But I kept getting calls and for several hours on end. And I worked from that place until my car battery voltage fell too low for the transceiver. And so I thought I better get the car started and get charged up again. And I was on the county, not a county line, but on the QSO party for most of the 9 hours. And we're kind of known as a smaller contest. After 9 hours, I was gassed. So we're not a small contest. We're a pretty well organized contest. So any other stories?
You've got a hand up remotely from Klaus. Klaus?
Yeah, just a comment from the home station, I guess. Right now I'm running a special event, and so that's very similar to the state QSO party where you just go out and shout CQ. So I don't have the benefit of Parks on the Air or anything like that. And probably most of you are experiencing that too. The bands are sometimes great and sometimes bad. And the key on being successful, I think, is just to be patient and persistent, continuing calling CQ, even if for a while you don't hear any responses, because sometimes the propagation is just so that the band is not favorable in the propagation, and you just kind of have to wait and work through that slot till you get a decent propagation. And then when that hits, then you get all of a sudden multiple stations. And that's what I've been experiencing, is either you're kind of just calling CQ and don't get anybody back, or all of a sudden you get a whole bunch back. And so the key is just to keep up with the patients. The other thing that I wanted to say is about the skill part. I'm kind of more in the side saying that, hey, amateur radio, keep in mind it's amateur, it's not professional radio. So don't worry about the skills, just go out there and try it out and acquire the skills as you work on it and learn it. So don't be afraid to make mistakes on that. We have a question on the chat. Should I go ahead and read that? John Kilo Echo Zero Victor Papa Alpha is asking, how do you determine exact county line location? GPS coordinates, question mark?
So I can speak to mine. What I use is two tools. One, you can go to the county assessor's page generally, and that will give you property boundaries, which will include the county lines. The most helpful that I found, though, is through the state of Iowa makes available ArcGIS tools, which include a lot of different boundaries and such, and amongst those include county lines. So if you search for, I believe it's called the Iowa Map Server is the best resource that I found, and then you can actually see where that county line is at, reference to GIS data with various layers that you can add on top. So you can add, all the political, roads, satellite view, aerial photography, all kinds of stuff there as well. So that's what I've generally used to ensure that I know where the county line boundaries are, because that is critical to the operation.
And I've also used the signs on the side of the road as you cross. And it isn't one sign here and exactly across the road is the other county sign. There's a little bit of a spongy area, which is fine. And last year I also was on County Line Road between Story and Boone. And I used the criteria that the old mobile net used. Don't park in the middle of the road or even on the road, get over on the shoulder, and you're on the county line. So I put out 2 counties at once that time last year. And the other times I just used the map, but I wasn't anywhere near the county line when I was in Guthrie County. Chuck?
I like your idea. Put your antenna on one side of the road. But okay, a couple hundred feet north of my house, there's 3 counties come to a point.
Yep.
Which has a 4-way stop sign on each side of that point. How would you split your stuff between 3 counties? Have you ever thought about that?
We did a 3-county, Clinton and I did a 3-county operation. So it was Hardin, Marshall, and Story. And we set up, so there's a field entrance, there's the right of way around the road, and it comes to just a 90-degree intersection right there. And we got off, parked in the field entrance on the right of way area there, set up my antenna directly over the GPS marker, or the pin for the county line corner, and set that up. So in your case, you'd have to figure out a way to get it across the lines. And in that case, the rules require your station to be physically in both of the counties in order to claim that county line operation.
You could maybe, if you got lucky and there was a culvert across this road and this road, you could be in this county with your vehicle, run your feed line through the next county and put your antenna in the other county.
Okay, that's what I was looking.
You could get creative.
You can add,
Power supply in one county.
and that's it, is get super creative with it.
Now, if you're not using a mobile antenna, I don't think you could be in the mobile entry classification.
That's correct.
It has to be, you can be parked, but it has to be a vehicle that can be moved.
Yeah, in that case, if you parked on the shoulder, I mean, if you found two roads intersected, you probably couldn't do that, but you could work maybe two of them if you were down one road and then went down the other road a ways, you could work the other two maybe.
So our rules specify that to be in the mobile category, the entire station must be capable of operation while in motion. Correct. So
Yeah.
we clarified that in the rules because there was some gray area there regarding how you might set up and do so. But that's the portable. And Clint had something back here he was raising his hand for.
I'll just say that the way our rules are written, being on one side of the road that's split down the middle would not be in compliance with both activating both counties. Right. Whether you're mobile or portable or whatever. We say that the station has to physically touch both counties. So unless you know the county line is not down the center of the road.
Yeah, if you found a county line that crossed, say, a county road that was paved, but on either side was not a county line road, you know, you could pull over on the shoulder and maybe then turn around and go on the other shoulder or something. You know, if it was split down the middle of your county road.
I can tell you in Sheldon, the county line road is county line. The speed limit's different on both sides of the road.
Yep.
And you've broken both of them?
What's that?
You've broken both of the speed limits? Never mind. Paul, how are we doing on time?
We probably got a couple more minutes that we could go if there's more discussion to be had, or we can wrap
Yeah.
now.
20 and 40, I want to say.
Yeah,
We see a little bit of 80 meters and then occasionally a few contacts on 2 meters and 440. But typically it's 20 and 40.
I did mine almost all on 20, which explains why I didn't get very many Iowa counties, which explains a moderate score. Chuck?
Constant.
Yep.
Constant. But then I switched to 40 and lo and behold, there was a constant, and I was running 4.5 watts. So I had no expectation for 40 and I was surprised. So
I'm sure there's a few that might make some contacts on 160. I'm trying to remember if I noticed any in logs or not, but I see 80 meters, but 20 and 40 is the big.
Yeah,
Thanks for doing the presentation. This was good. You had a website, 3830.com. It's actually 3830scores.com.
that's right. That's right. I remember that now. Yeah,
But good.
Bunch of guys
Yeah.
complaining about why the scores don't, why the
Yeah.
contest. It's interesting site.
okay, let's wrap it up. Thanks for your questions and thanks for being here and on the internet.
Probably the last thing I would say is there's a lot of good information on the website. So go to the club website and there's a Iowa QSO party link there. And anybody who's here, feel free to take a bookmark, even if you already know all the details, there's a nice bookmark. More people hear about the contest.
Outstanding.
Thanks.
Thanks, Skip. Thanks, Jason.